All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we're continuing on our 3D models. We're pushing that much further. And what we'll work on is the exterior night rendering. So we've kind of worked our way through each of the major renderings. Each time, hopefully, you're improving, you're tweaking, you're making better. Last class, we talked an awful lot about kind of setting it up so that you could flip back and forth between the day render and the night render. And so I'll review a lot of those settings, and then we'll talk about some of the more advanced things that you might want to do on the exterior of your building. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. And so we'll go, that's just the way the day has gone, tongue-tied. Let's open up Rhino. Maybe. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close all of my V-Ray toolbars, and we'll dock the main V-Ray toolbar. Let's go ahead and open this up. And then let's go to File and then Open, and I'm going to open my master site. Oops, looks like I have to say okay there. And let's go into my OneDrive here. Now, I mentioned this last class, and I should have done it in advance today, but let's go through a couple of things that we want to make sure that we're doing when we first log into OneDrive. First off, I have my caffeine app right here. I've double clicked on it, so it's running. We can see it down here in the bottom corner. There it is, the little coffee pot. If I right click on it, I could say I want to be active for 8 hours. That way, when I'm doing my rendering, I'm not going to be kicked off unnecessarily. So that's the first piece. Second piece is making sure that my resources are all available locally on this computer. So I have, for me, it's under my live demonstrations folder. And then here's my artist retreat folder. I want to right click on it and make sure that it's always on this device. That's going to download all of the files. Furthermore, under resources, I have another set of stuff. I have both V-Ray materials that I've used in the past, so we will keep those on this device. And I also have blocks that I use that are in my Rhino folder here. And I will right click and always keep those on the device. So it's going to take a little bit of time to sync as it downloads all of those files, but I'm going to feel a lot better. It's going to work a lot better if I've downloaded all of those before I start working in Rhino. So that's just kind of a bit of review practice. I'm going to go ahead and open up my master site file. So let's get into my 205. And I'm going to go ahead and open master site ocean file. All right, and the last time we rendered, we were working on the interior rendering. So if we go back to our V-Ray asset, oops, I have to set it as the current renderer. Let's go to render, current renderer, V-Ray for Rhino. I'm going to open up my V-Ray asset editor. There it is. And I had previously saved my settings. So if I go to settings, I could then open my night settings. So these were in my folder. Let's go. There we go. I have my V-Ray settings. I'm going to open up that night render settings. Go ahead and say open. And that then brings back in all of my night render settings, which should include my HDRI background images that are set up as the night render. Now, I think I did the sunset. And so I think I'm actually going to do one that's a full night view for this exterior rather than a sunset view. So let's go ahead and review the process of switching over into that set of settings anyway. I did go ahead and log in to the Digital Tools for Architects website so that I can access my V-Ray quick rendering setups. And I can refer to my information here. And so here we have basic night. There they are, basic night scene 1, basic night scene 2. I can use either one of these. That would be fine. I have them both on my flash drive. So let's go ahead and work to set those up. Okay, so I'll come back and I'll refer to that in just a second. So on this, first thing I need to do is open up my environment, and we're going to clear the background. So I'll right click and say clear. I'll go ahead and click on the checkerboard and choose a bitmap. This is going to have me switch HDRI background images. So let's go ahead, and I have this stored in my resources folder in V-Ray, and then I have a V-Ray HDRI folder, and then I have a night HDRIs, and I was using the Moonlight one. There it is. So I have a Moonlight and I have Moonlight GI. I'm going to choose the Moonlight. We should be able to see the preview of it there. We'll go back to my settings, and we need to make sure that my background settings are correct. So set reflection, refraction, background to 0.25. So this is actually darkening it a little bit. So let's jump back over into Rhino and set this background to 0.25. There it is. And then we're going to move on to the GI. So let's right click to clear. Click the checkerboard and choose a bitmap again. And this time I'm going to choose the Moonlight GI. We'll go ahead and say OK. I'll go back to my settings. I need to refer to the website for that. It's set to 1.0. And we'll change that value to 1.0 as well. And I'm not sure yet on what our camera settings need to be. I have it set at exposure value of 12. That may be okay. But now that these settings are relatively correct, I'm going to go ahead and save this just in case. So I'll click on the little disk icon. And let me go ahead in my I'll call this Night Render 2 settings. And remember, I can always overwrite that file as I make changes to it, but that'll give me a place to start from. So at this point, we could go back into my render output. Let's go ahead and open that one up. And right here, I want to make sure that it's set pretty small, which it currently is. So if I were to render this, we get a pretty good sense. I'm also going to match the viewport so that what I see on the screen is what I'm going to render. So let's go ahead and do a quick little test here to make sure all my lights are still working. Lights are still working. Looks like my sun is on outside. So let's stop that. That's why I do these little tests to begin with. Let's come over here into my layers. Yep, my sun was on. Oops. Why is my couch? My couch should not be on the sun layer. So let me change, I think, both my lamp, oops, they should be on the blocks layer. There we go. And let's try that one again. Still looking a little bright outside, probably means my exposure values aren't quite set right. So let's go into my camera and let's increase this. I'm going to go up to 14 or 15 and we'll render again and take a look. That seems a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. We don't need to push through that too much, but now it's time to switch, like we've been talking about, back to the outside view. So I did have a view that was already set up. So I could go back to my views, set view. This was render 1. And there's that exterior view that I had set it previously. And so now we can kind of confirm, oh, the sun was still on. There we go. Now the sun's off. Now we can confirm that this is setting up correctly. A couple notes when we get to this exterior view. Number one, any glass that's in your building, you probably want to change, if you have specialty glass, you want to change to just a basic glass for any of the materials. We can confirm that by looking at our materials here. It looks like I have a basic, oh, that's grass. Sorry, I can't even read. Yeah, I have basic glass being used. Do I have any of the skyscraper glass or anything in here? It doesn't appear so. So that's good. So basic glass will render out nicely in our night settings. And from here, we could do a little test render just to see what it looks like. If we did it correctly, we should see a little bit of light spilling out outside the building, coming out through our windows there. A little bit coming out through the windows. That's good. It's still awfully dark. Let's go double check our settings. And we will change that exposure value back down. I'm going to go back to 12. Let me render it again. Should make things just a little bit brighter. And you'll see if I zoom in here, yes, it's blurry, but you can see that light is spilling out of our windows. That's good. We've got a material issue in that little patch that didn't get assigned material correctly. And we're not really getting any light outside the building right now. And so maybe we want to install some exterior lights on this building. And so we can work through some kind of basic options. And this is, again, we're thinking through it. We might want to actually install some new fixtures on the exterior. Maybe you have modeled an exterior fixture, you'd like to do that. We could also do some uplights against the building if we wanted to. So let's work through some uplights. I actually have some little downlights that I put in here, but maybe we want to shine up at the building as well. Let's try that. So I'll use a spotlight. I'll come over to my spotlight tool right here, and we'll go ahead. I'm going to turn on my snaps here. Go ahead and snap to that. Let's do our 1 foot radius, and we'll do our height at 1 foot. I'm just doing this in the top view because it makes life a little bit easier here. So we'll do this at 1 foot. And we want to be pointing up. There it is. So I'll take this light and then I'm going to manipulate it a little bit. And this may be an opportunity to use the gumball a bit as well. Or you could use the rotate 3D, and that might work out. But a gumball might be the fastest way of kind of adjusting. So I want to tip this so that it's pointing more at the building, or like that. And if we jump into looking at this in the full size, you can see that basically I'm trying to shine it up toward the building there a little bit. I do want to make sure that it's not inside of this object. So we want to make sure that I'm pulling it out and away from the object just a bit. If at any point you feel a little bit lost, remember you can always use your other views to confirm. There you go. It's not inside that little bit there. That seems pretty good. And now we need to go through some settings on that light. So let's open up our V-Ray asset editor. And actually, for clarity, I should put it on its own layer. Let's go ahead and create a new sublayer. This is exterior 1. Let's right click and say change objects layers. And we could even rename this light to be exterior spotlight. There we go. Let's adjust our settings. I'm going to leave it on 100, but I do want to switch into watts. And I want to adjust my color. We're going to use a scale of 0 to 255. So it'll be 255, 214, and 214 and 170. And there it is. And the rest of these settings are all okay for right now. We'll step back. And then I want to switch back into that render 1 view there so we can confirm that this is even working before we copy and paste it. So we'll click on the little teapot icon to render again. And yes, this is a glass wall, so we're not getting too much illumination on that glass wall, but you can see that it's lighting up that part of the upper wall here. And it's lighting up a little bit there. So maybe we want to copy a few more. So I'll go ahead and click on stop. And we can come over and we can copy. And maybe we'll put another one right there. And we'll see how those look. So I'll jump back into my render one. And then we'll go ahead and render it again. So there you can see we're putting a little bit more uplighting on the building, and that may or may not be what you're after, but the point is that we're starting to install some additional lighting. Now, if you weren't happy with those kind of spotlights, we could also set up a light fixture, say for underneath here, that went along that little lip. And that would be a good opportunity for a rectangular light. So let's create a little rectangular light. I'm going to go ahead and let's do another layer, and we'll call this I'm going to call it the exterior wash. I'm going to make that active, and then we'll use the rectangular light here, rectangular light corner. I'm going to pick this outermost corner right there. Rectangular light length, we're going to come along to right here. And then rectangular light width, I'm going to snap back to where I'm just even with that. And there's that rectangular light right there. I need to make sure that it's not coplanar. So in one of these side views, we can move it down just a little bit. And again, I've left that gumball on to kind of help me out a little bit. There you go. It's just slightly below there. And the thing about rectangular lights is it's much harder to predict exactly how much the power they should have because it's based on the area of the light. It's distributed out over the area. So we're going to have to make a few guesses. So first thing I'm going to do is open up the V-Ray asset editor. There's my rectangle light. I'm going to call this wash 1. And we'll change the color, 255, 214, and 170. There we go. Our color set. And we're going to switch into our radiant power of watts. And then remember, we have some options for these. And I can choose to have the lights invisible or not. In this case, I might leave them visible, but it doesn't really matter. It is casting shadows, and no, I don't want it to be double-sided. Remember, the invisible, you can see it. There it is without the light. There it is with the light. Okay, so let's take a look and see what this looks like. Let's go into set view, go back to render 1, and then we'll go ahead and render it out. So you see that part of doing this exterior night is doing these little test renderings so you can start to see what's working and what's not. So we're getting a nice little wash along that edge. If we wanted to have it cast down further, we could increase the power, but we could also add another little light up here and then maybe another little light over the corner. So we're evolving this light as we go along. So let's create another one right under here. So I'll go back to my rectangular light. We'll start right there on this corner. We'll come over to right about there. And let me turn on my perpendicular snap. I can snap to right there. There it is. And this is one of those, we're going to have to experiment with it because I can't promise that they'll look the same. So let's, again, look at it in the side view here. Go ahead and pull it down just a little bit. Right about like that. We'll go into our V-Ray options here. I'm going to rename this to be Wash 2. Go. And we'll change this 255, 214, and 170. There we go. Default options are fine. I am going to switch this into radiant power watts. Now we may have to adjust this value because this is smaller, so it might be stronger than this. We're going to have to just test it and see. I should not have started that because the view isn't set right. So let's go back to set view. Let's go back to render 1. And then let's do another test. And you can see in this preview that that light is a little bit stronger than this light. So I would either need to drop the wattage of this one down or increase the wattage of that one, just so that they looked similar. So let's go back. There's my wash 2, and let's drop that to maybe 80. We can stop, and then we can render again. And now we're starting to get that little bit of wash there. So I could use this similar strategy. I could put a little bit of wash up here on that ledge if I wanted to. I do really need to fix this material. It's bugging me that I don't have the correct material on that. So let's take a look at, I'm going to go ahead and stop this render. That is in this file. So I have this, and let's take a look at what its material is. It's the grass B. So I should take this piece and I should change it to the grass B material. So let's look for the grass B material. There we go. And then I would also like the texture mapping of this object. So I'm going to click on texture mapping to match the texture mapping of this large object, just so that they become seamless. So if I went back to render now, that should be the same green grass that the outside was. There we go. So you can see that that material is now crossed over. So I'm slowly tweaking and improving my settings until I feel like I like the end result and what it looks like for the exterior night render. Now I happen to be using the exact same view that I did for my daytime render. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can absolutely use the same view. But if you change your mind and you want to switch to a different view, you want to show a different view, there's nothing wrong with that either. So some of you have already noticed that I added a pool to the end of this particular project. And I think the pool enhances the night quite a bit. And so I'm going to go through the process of that. Now, the pool itself is built very straightforward. And I could open up another Rhino just so you can see it. Let me go ahead and do that. And I do this and I show you this because water is one of those things that people often want to have. So being able to render water is certainly important. So let me go ahead and open up. I'm going to go to File and then Open. And I'm going to open up my retreat base file. There it is. Go ahead and open it. Come on. Still loading. Okay, so let's close off these pieces. And we can dock the V-Ray All toolbar. Perfect. So let me switch back into shaded mode for just a bit. We'll jump outside and we'll take a look at this construction. Actually, let's switch into ghosted mode. There we go. So all I did was, this is a curve network, right? Where I've created a profile curve and I've created a border curve that goes all the way around. I did split that so that I can do a little bit of tile around the outside edge. So if you look here, there's that little bit of tile. That's just to change the material. So I did a kind of a gray bottom to the pool, and then I did a little bit of a blue tile along the edge. That would be at the water line. Then I installed a surface right here that would be representative. Whoops. There's the surface that would be representative of the water. And then I have a little bit of coping that goes around the outside of this little pool that matches the material here. So if I were to switch this over into my rendered mode, you should be able to see this like that. There you go. You can see kind of the gray. You can see the little bit of blue porcelain that I used as my tile. And you can see the concrete that goes around the outside. Likewise, you can see the concrete that's been applied to my walls here. Actually, it looks like that's the wrong concrete. Oops. It's okay. It's up against the hill. You can't see it. Okay. So the other piece of this is, what about the water itself? This material that's on the very top. And why I have two, I'm not quite sure. Let's go ahead and delete one of these. And there we go. Let's look at that material. So I'm going to go into my V-Ray asset editor. We're going to look at materials, and I have a water fountain material, and that's available on the course website to download. The key here is that water fountain material looks a lot like water, but it does have a little displacement map that's been applied to it. And that map adds a certain amount of waves to that file. This should be loaded. There it is. And that represents our waves that are on the surface. It's just a noise texture that's been applied. And so with all of that applied, when I save this and then jump back over into my rendered view right here, right, we could actually update this. Let me go to edit blocks, block manager. Nothing's really changed, but we'll go ahead and update it anyway. Perfect. Everything's updated. And I have my water that's in the scene. I have all of the elements that I was just talking about. What I don't have is a light to light up the pool. So let's use a rectangular light to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the rectangular light tool. And I'm going to create it the same size as the surface of my water. So we'll go there, and we'll come to right there. And this is now my light. I'm going to move it down into the water a little bit, so it's lower than the water. And then let's go ahead and open up my V-Ray asset editor again. And
Can I do it in a circle instead of rectangle?
I'm using the rectangular light because I'm mimicking the light at the surface rather than putting a spot inside and having it shine out.
The same one, but you know, if you have a circular pool.
Oh, a circular pool. That's a hard one because I'm thinking I might do a spotlight at the bottom. I might do a rectangular light and then just hide it underneath the surrounding deck. You're right. You do have a circular pool on yours. Let's work on yours, and we'll sort out a solution for it. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's change some settings on this. First off, under our color, instead of the 255, 214, 170, I'm actually going to pick kind of a turquoisey blue color. So something about like that. I'm going to change my power here into my radiant power, and I'm going to beef up the intensity here to maybe like 300. I'm also going to go down into my options, and I'm going to make it invisible. And I'm also going to make it double-sided, so it's shining both up and down at the same time. The rest of these all seem okay. And at this point, it's time to do a test render to see if this is going to turn out. So we'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to flip this around, look right about there. And actually, I would feel better if this was a little bit wider than a 50. So I'm going to go to a 28. There we go. Just see a little bit more of the building. So let's go like that. I am zooming in on it because I want to confirm that the water is working. And let's go ahead and do a test render. I'll click on the little teapot here. And I think I have to increase the intensity because I'm not getting the blue out of the blue glow from under the water that I want. So let me go ahead and stop the rendering. Let's get back to it. And we're going to increase this up to maybe 1,000. Remember, this is a much, oops. Back up to 1,000. I'm going to go back into my V-Ray asset editor and make sure. Oh, I was going to call this pool light. Let's do that. This is a much larger rectangle, so we have to increase the power to compensate for that. So let's do a little render here. And there we're starting to see it. I can see a little bit of the blue, but it's not nearly enough yet. So let's go up to 3,000. And we'll go ahead and render it. Oops. There we go. We're starting to see the glow now. So it might even need to be a little bit more, even a little bit stronger. And this is where you have to kind of sort out what the right values are. So I'm going to go and bump that all the way up to 5,000. And then we're getting ready to do a more advanced kind of final rendering because we have that part of the puzzle in. So there we go. We're starting to get that glow off of the pool as if there were pool lights in it. Obviously, I don't have the little rectangular light along this edge. There's some little pieces that I'd like to improve. So we'll come back and we'll do a render, and perhaps I'll adjust this. Let's go right about there. Let's go to pan. Let's drop this down a little bit. And this is one of those crazy views that you'd never actually get to see in real life because we'd be floating if I were to take this view. But we'll go ahead and set that one up, and then I'm going to go ahead and save it. So let's go to set view, named views, and we can call this one render 2. And we'll go ahead and click on save, and there's that render. That way we can kind of test out what's going on in the pool. So that's for the pool part. And like I said, today I'm going to dump some extra stuff on you as we start to fine tune these renderings, because going forward, we're going to start moving more in the direction of creating sections and line drawings and using our model to our advantage to make other parts of the process. So I'm going to switch back here, and I'm going to look at this grass. And the grass here is not quite, when we render it out, we're in the dark, and maybe I need to switch it into the daytime render so you can see this a little bit better, and maybe I will for right now. Since we have the render settings set, I'm going to go back into my settings here, and I'm going to save all of my settings. And this is going to be my night render 2 settings. We'll go back to save, replace it. That means we can reload them. And then I'll go ahead and I'll load the daytime settings. So I'm switching back over into the daytime settings. Go ahead and open. And then we'll need to turn back on the sun. There it is. And we can drop back into our render 2 view. Oops, sorry, that was supposed to be the render 1 view. And if I migrated correctly when we do the rendering, this should now be a daytime render. So let's confirm that it did. Yep, looks like we've switched over into the daytime render. I may have an issue with the sky. It looks a little bit dark, so I'm going to have to continue tweaking my settings here just a bit. But let's go ahead and stop. And you can see that one of the biggest problems here is that the grass just doesn't look particularly realistic. And that's one of the challenges whenever we're doing rendering. So what we can do is we can actually kind of fake the grass. Now, faking the grass on a giant hillside like this is never really going to work. So when we get into faking grass, we want to be very careful about what it is that we're showing in a particular view. And we want to show just the pieces that matter and not a bunch of extra parts of our building. And so this is one of the key takeaways today, is that you, as the person doing the design work, are really in charge of what you're showing and what you're not showing. So if you didn't model something, you can just keep it hidden in your rendering and not really show that part that's unresolved. So we want to make sure that you're showing the parts that are resolved, that you're spending the time to do. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to a 28 millimeter, so we're a little bit wider. And then I'm going to zoom in such that I hope I can eliminate most of the grass that is on the hillside. So I might change my view to be more like that, where I'm showing this part of the grass. This grass is really far away. This grass is really far away as well. I could shift my view over just a little bit more like that, maybe. And we could pan this a little bit more over, maybe about like that, pull that down just a little bit. And so I'm really trying to carefully consider what parts of my view I'm seeing. So you're seeing that I'm blocking off the hillside down here. We can see a little bit. I've now blocked off that hillside completely, but I'm showing this part of the grass. So again, I'm carefully considering what it is that I'm showing. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'll go to File and then Save. Yes. And then I tend, when I start messing with these kinds of settings, I do a save as, just in case I mess it up to the point where I need to go back. So I'm going to do a save as, and we'll call this master site ocean-grass test. And we'll go ahead and click on save. Do you really want to do this? Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to be working with this bit of material right here. And that's great. And I will tell you that this may not work. And sometimes when you do it live, you just take a stab at it. I'm going to try it and we'll see what happens. So I'm going to take this piece of grass right here, and I'm with it selected. I'm going to come up to this. Where is it? It's under. Let me move this over just a little bit. I want to make sure that I get it correct here. That is not, where is it? All right, let me see if I can do it over here. Okay, so I thought it showed up here in my properties. It hasn't showed up there yet, but in the V-Ray toolbar here, there is a tool that looks like kind of grass sprouting out that is Add Fur to Selection. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Add Fur to Selection. And it would be really nice if it showed me. So we're seeing the fur there, but where are my settings for the fur? Well, let's go into my V-Ray asset editor. They must be in here. And let's go back to see them. There it is. There's my fur. So we're going to call this grass instead of fur. And then here are where we have all our settings for this fur. So first off, we have a distribution per area. Per area count is at 0.6. We can increase this to increase the number of grass blades that are there. We're going to leave these by default right now to take a look. Our length should be in inches. We're going to increase that. I'm going to go up to 10 inches like that. Our thickness, yeah, we'll go with that. Our gravity, all of that looks okay. Okay, let's go ahead and do a render and take a look at what happens. And this is one of those moments where we just have to let the render play out. So we're concerned with this area right here. So let's let it do its thing. So far it's not looking long enough for me. But I need to let it go long enough to confirm. Yep, doesn't look long enough. So I'm going to stop the render. And we'll come back to our V-Ray fur settings. Let's go to our asset editor. All right. So distribution per area, let's increase this. We'll go at 10. And our length, I'm going to go up at 24. Thickness 0.5. All right, we'll go with those options. And we'll go ahead and re-render. And I know it's patient, it is painful to keep waiting. Let me stop this and let's see if I can change our render output to be smaller so it doesn't take quite as long. Let's go back to our, and I'm going to increase the value of our environment here. Let's go up to 6 just so it's a little bit lighter. And where is my render output? Yes, let's drop this down 300. And that's fine that our directory doesn't exist right now. Solve that in a second. Still not getting enough. I'm going to stop this. And like I said, this is one of those moments where sometimes what I'm trying to do doesn't always work out. It also feels like my environment isn't loaded correctly. I'm going to clear that and reload it just to confirm. All right, and let's go back to my fur. Let's go at 100. And then we'll try to render again. And if this one doesn't turn out, I won't make you sit and watch me keep doing it over and over again. I will figure out what the settings are on my own time, and then I'll send you a message and let you know what the settings were. For it, because it should be working better. I wonder whether I have it going the wrong direction. It might be pointing down. Try it one more time here. All right, well, it's obviously not working the way I want it to. So I will figure out why it's not working, and I'll get back to you, and I apologize about that. While I'm rendering this, since we're on the day render settings, I am noticing that I'm getting a faint little bit of horizon there. That's causing a problem. So I may want to tweak that out just a little bit, and I can do that. And I've done this for a few of you during the check-ins. But what I can do is I can take this giant dinner plate in the ocean, and I can actually do a scale to raise up where the horizon is. So I can kind of fake it a bit. So let's go here. I'm going to type in scale 1D. And what I'll do is I'll stretch where the horizon is on that plate a bit, bringing it up over where that line was. So let me back up here a little bit more. I should have done it right here. Scale 1D. Let me back up. Hold on. There it is. Some days you just can't type. Let's try this again. All right. So I'm effectively raising the horizon, and you can see it over in this view when it happens. So I can raise up that horizon so it's past where that little bit of the HDRI was showing, and then we can re-render this one. The daytime render is actually the most challenging render to get really good results because of the ground and the surrounding context. That's always the hard one. So today we were about the nighttime render. I just ended up switching over because I was trying to get the grass to work correctly. And now I'm getting other little bits of grass happening down in here. So obviously I have to work on this. Something's going on, not quite working the way I want it to. So I'll sort that one out and I'll get back to you. There's that. But our purpose today was to do the nighttime render. So once again, I can switch back into the nighttime render by going into our settings, and then I can go ahead and open up my nighttime render. So I'll go back to my folder. And this is why you save all those VR opt files, because it makes it really easy to switch back and forth. So we'll go ahead and go to there. We're back to our night settings. I'll come over here. I'll turn off the sun. And then I need to increase the size here. So let's make the height at 1080. And then down here, let's make sure that we're automatically saving our file. So I'll click on that. I'm going to make sure I choose the file path. So we want to go into, there it is. We'll go into renders. And we would call this render exterior night. That way it's automatically saving. I want to make sure that I'm saving it as a JPEG, not a PNG, because I want to preserve the sky. And all of those are set. We can turn on the swarm just in case that helps a little bit. All of my settings are good, and I'll go ahead and let it render out. So I'll click on the render icon, and we should start a high quality night render of it right now. All right, so I will let you guys all go. We will have check-ins today. I'll start my first group at 12:20. And again, we're starting to kind of wrap things up. So I look forward to seeing these renders start to materialize. If you have any questions, let me know, and we'll go from there.